In Moonlight, Chiron, who is known as Little, asks Juan, "What's a faggot?" This is a powerful scene that encapsulates many of the film's themes and styles that are central to its exploration of identity, masculinity, and societal attitudes toward sexuality, especially in the African American community. Little's question comes from hearing a slur that he doesn't fully understand, but feels very strongly about. This moment is important because it deals with the intersection of linguistics and identity. Little's ideas about who he is and his sexuality are greatly affected by how Juan responds. As a male figure in Little's life, Juan shows a different kind of masculinity that is caring and protecting, which is different from the masculinity that Little observes around him, which is often aggressive and arrogant. Juan's gentle approach to the question shows that he doesn't agree with toxic masculinity and provides Little a safe place to feel at ease. The scene goes against the norms of gender and sexuality. It directly engages with queer theory. Juan's answer that "a faggot is a word used to make gay people feel bad" starts a conversation about how language shapes social norms and individual sense of self. Judith Butler's idea of performativity is reflected in Juan and Little's conversation, which is about how gender and sexual identities are controlled by social expectations and labels. Juan's answer tries to free the word from its negative meaning, pointing out how identities can change in response to rigid social norms. The scene also touches on intersectionality by showing how racial and sexual identities can compound experiences of discrimination and confusion about one's place in society. This moment is very important because it shows how detrimental toxic masculinity and peer pressure can be. Kevin, who was a source of understanding and potential love for Chiron, is coerced into betraying him. This act of violence is not only physical, but also symbolic. It demonstrates a breach of trust and ends Chiron's tentative exploration of his identity. The scene explores the conflict between vulnerability and the expectations of masculinity. Chiron's quiet and shyness are viewed as weaknesses by his peers. Kevin's violent behavior is a forced performance of masculinity that hides his true emotions. This demonstrates how painfully gender roles are enforced in their community. Based on Judith Butler's concept, this scene shows how gender is performed when people are pressured to do so. Kevin's violent act is a performance that he does to show his peers that he is a man, in line with the rules of the hegemonic masculinity that rules their social environment. This scene shows how dangerous it can be to be visibly different from the norm in a hostile setting. Chiron is violently rejected when he begins to display signs of being gay, demonstrating how dangerous it is to defy societal gender and sexual norms. Chiron's intersectional identity leaves him at risk to be harmed and misunderstood because he is a young black man who is exploring his sexuality. This scene shows how Chiron's problems are made worse by his race and his sexuality, which is a reflection of larger problems in society like racism and homophobia. In Moonlight, this scene is a critical examination at how social standards can hurt a person's sense of self. It shows how hard it is to figure out who you are with the intersection of race and sexuality in a restrictive social setting. We can understand more about how the movie depicts the problems of people who don't fit into standard normative frameworks by looking at this moment through the lenses of queer theory and the ideas of gender performativity. This study not only helps us understand Chiron's personality better, but it also echoes larger conversations in society about identity, acceptance, and the cost of conformity. The diner scene in Moonlight, where Chiron meets Kevin again, is a key point where the narrative and emotions come together. Their encounter is layered with identity, change, and reconciliation themes, and it allows them to reflect intensely about their shared past and their own paths into adulthood. Kevin's job as the cook, providing Chiron the meal he made, presents his nurturing side and contrasts with the time he hurt Chiron physically when they were kids. This act of kindness represented a subtle apology and a desire to make things right. Chiron's transformation into a muscular, rugged man is a stark contrast to the fragile kid he once was, but his meeting with Kevin proves that his core emotional identity remains intact. This scene demonstrates the fluidity of identity, how external changes can mask vulnerabilities and similarities on the inside. Both characters perform masculinity in ways that society expects of them based on their pasts and how they have survived. Chiron's muscular and gold chains represent a performed hypermasculinity used as a protective facade. Kevin's role in the diner and his relationship with Chiron, on the other hand, shows a softer, more nurturing side of masculinity that goes against traditional ideas. The scene in the diner encapsulates a moment of time where the past and the present intersect, allowing the characters reevaluate their identities and roles. This space, away from the influences of their respective daily lives, makes it easier for them to be honest with each other. This shows that the concept of queer space is one filled with transformation and possibility. This scene additionally addresses about the intersectionality of race and sexuality. As African American men, both characters have to figure out how to be who they are in ways that clash with what society expects of them and what they know to be true. Their conversation and the intimacy of the interaction highlights the complexities of living as a black man. Potentially queer men in a society that often looks to marginalizes these identities. The emotional depth of their interaction, especially as Chiron slowly tells them about his life. This represents themes of resilience and the search for emotional health and acceptance. Kevin's ability to understand and accept Chiron gives him a rare and valuable chance to be vulnerable. Moonlight beautifully conveys the movie's main themes, such as identity, transformation, and how the impact of love can change people for a long time. Intimacy and subtlety are important in film, and this scene uses them to explore deep issues of masculinity, identity performance, and intersectionality of race and sexuality. This film analysis, based on queer theory and addresses gender performativity, shows how Moonlight challenges standard narratives and provides a complex portrayal of how people and identities change over time.